Sorry guys. Hello, I'm Jacob, here with my brother Joshua. Today we're going to wrap up the how to use ferro rods video for beginners. If you're not familiar, the first two videos in this series, which I'll put a link to here, were about tinder. That might not make a lot of sense to you, but the reason why is the most important part of using a ferro rod successfully is having proper tinder. The reason being that it's likely that a person with very little skill and maybe not the best tools can certainly get a fire going easily if they have the perfect tinder. On the flip side, the person with the best tools in the world and the most skill, if they have no tinder, is not going to get a fire going, or very bad tinder and conditions, not going to get a fire going. So when you're thinking about and you're learning how to use your ferro rod effectively, keep in mind, get the best tinder you possibly can. Now today I'll show you, the last few days it's been raining and tinder is a lot harder to find when everything's wet. And we're going to be playing today in a more wet environment. Stop it! Scudley, stop it! Stop! You can't eat my tripod! Okay, so one thing to keep in mind if you're out bushcrafting or doing survival training or just out camping is having man-made tinder on hand all the time. One way that's very common that you can ensure that you always have good tinder is to carry an Altoids tin emergency kit with tinder in it. This one comes from Dragonfire Tinderbox. You can always get tinder from Dragonfire Tinderbox. They do an amazing job. And for a limited time, you can get this tinder kit with the Beach and Tactical sear pouch that I designed on beachandtactical.com. But in an Altoids tin like this, you can use these to make char cloth. You can put some fishing line in there. You can put some hooks in there. You can put some tinder in there. And if you carry this on you, this can be a really good way to always have tinder on you. Another thing that you can do is carry something like the Exotech ferro rod. It has a watertight screw-off, stop it Dixie, container here where you can put one of their Exotech fire tabs in the top and always have dry, incredible tinder with your ferro rod. And you can have something like this for a real emergency, an Exotech zipper pull here. These have wax sealed jute on the inside. So in an emergency, you cut off your little zipper pulls and on the inside, boom, you've got tinder. The reason that I talk about artificial tinder that you carry with you is in a bad situation, it's gonna work. And all of your survivalists carry it. It just makes too much sense. So in a situation like we're in today, you might want to go out there and search for tinder, but it might not be beneficial for your time, and you could waste your energy sitting there all day like this, trying to get a fire going. Now that we're done talking about tinder, let's talk about the method or techniques that you use to actually strike the ferro rod itself. So the first thing that you need to know about scraping your ferro rod is you have to have a hard 90-degree edge or a sharp edge. It doesn't have to be metal, it can be ceramic or it could be stone, but it has to be sharp. So like on this SCPR4, it has a sharpened spine, which means both edges of this spine are a sharp 90-degree corner. Not so sharp that they would cut you, sharp enough to strike your ferro rod. You can use your edge, but I do not ever recommend it. You can tear up an edge very quickly. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your sharp edge, whatever it is, you need to apply a good amount of pressure. Stop it! Stop it, Kimber. No, it's Scudley. You stop. No, get out of here. You want a good bit of pressure, and you want to find what angle works best for getting your sparks. So if I hold it like this, where the blade is almost perpendicular to the ferro rod, I'm probably not going to get sparks as well. If I start to angle it all the way forward, again, it's not going to spark as well. I prefer to hold it right about in the middle, and this way I can also control where my sparks are going. Because if you get the best sparks in the world, but they're not on your tinder, they're not going to do you a lot of good. Now, there are two basic methods for striking your ferro rod. There's moving your knife forward, which can be effective, and a lot of people will do this right up in the tinder and try and do it really quickly like this. And then what I prefer is I prefer to hold the knife still and draw the ferro rod back like this. Now let me show you how I do this with a big knife. When I use a large knife to strike a ferro rod, I like to hold the end of the knife under my foot so that the knife is steady and I can draw across, pull my ferro rod across the square spine of the large knife with a lot of force. Now, I've had some comments recently saying that when I struck my ferro rod, fire came out of it, not just sparks. The reason is pressure, and I'm able to get that amount of pressure because my knife is stabilized against my ferro rod. So check it out. So what's happening is I'm scraping off very large chunks of ferro rod at a time, which is getting awesome gobs of fire. It's about pressure, and it's very easy to do if you can stabilize your knife like on your foot while you're drawing your ferro rod across. And like I said, for this reason, of all the tools that I use to strike a ferro rod, I prefer a large knife. Now, let's talk about using an axe. Most axes do not have square edges that are hardened for you to strike a ferro rod. The Council Tool Woodcraft series of axes does. The axe, just like the knife, I want to find a way to stabilize it, and then once again, I'm going to draw my ferro rod across it. And there's a lot of ways to do this. While I'm down here in this cave, normally I'll stabilize it against my foot like I do with the knife. But you just have to find a way to where you can stabilize it, you can get good pressure, and you can get sparks on your tinder. And this Council tool is sharpened all the way across the top, which is nice. So you've got a lot of capability. I'm not doing so hot with it right now. I usually do. There. So now let's talk about the tools that you can use or what to consider. As you've seen, I prefer using a large knife, but I can also use an axe, and I can also use a knife with a square spine. One thing that you need to consider is traditionally a lot of the American-made knives come with a powder coating, whether it be Essie, Becker, Ontario, Schrade, you name it. You get a high carbon steel knife with a powder coated finish like this. These do not have square spines on them, and so you cannot strike a ferro rod off of this, and you would need to use your edge, which again is not advisable. For these tools, that's one of the reasons that it's so popular to see these stripped of their powder coating finish, and people will put a square edge on them. And there are other benefits to stripping the finish, but when you do that, you lose your corrosion resistance. Essie now, thank goodness, in my opinion, has their Woodcraft line of knives. And once again, they have a black oxide finish or a standard finish, and they do have a square spine. So this includes the CR 2.5, the JG3, the RB3, the PR4, the JG5, and hopefully more to follow. But I really like having a knife with a square spine. For me, it just makes too much sense. Some other knives, like the Firecraft series of knives from White River Knives, also have a ferro rod notch here that's square. And this can be, again, very nice. You use it the same as if it was a square spine, but sometimes you can get a little bit nicer sparks out of them because you have more surface area due to the round notch. So these are great to use. So now you know how to find tinder and how important it is to find good tinder. I've purposely used this crappy tinder this entire video to show you in contrast how nice it can be to use artificial tinder that you bring out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my Exotac tinder out of my ferro rod here. We're going to fluff it up a little bit. There we go. The more fluffy, the better. And we're going to put it into our crappy tinder. So let's say that you've just been working all of this time on getting your tinder and it just sucks and you've decided to use your artificial emergency tinder. Now you can ideally still use your wet stuff with your artificial stuff and get this fire going. Ideally, obviously, you'd have as much dry, flammable kindling nearby as possible. Boom, it's going. And my wet tinder is going now that it's got that much flame. Or you can get it going at least. Don't want to put it out. This will, and the artificial tinders, especially from Exotac, Dragonfire, or Beach and Tactical, I sell my own brand of fire starters, will burn for quite some time. So if you're having trouble with tinder that's as crappy as this is, you will probably have enough burn time to get your fire going anyways. So I hope that this has all helped you. If you're a beginner with a ferro rod and you're still learning, get out there, gather your tinder, learn what works for you, learn what angles you want to use with your sharp edge, whatever that might be, and just get to striking. Buy some extra ferro rods or with an Exotac ferro rod replacements. And one last thing to consider before we go is, when you're choosing your ferro rod, you might want to consider, like this Exotac Nano Spark here, you might want to consider a ferro rod that has a striker. Or you might want to consider an extra striker. Why? Because if you lose your knife, if you let someone borrow your knife, if your knife doesn't have a square spine for whatever the reason, if you have your ferro rod, you also have a striker. So whatever the case may be, even without a knife, you can still make your sparks. And ideally, get a fire going. So, I hope that you guys have learned from this. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this series. I want to give a quick shout out to some of the stuff that I have out here today. Doug Wilson of Yellow Hawk Custom Kydex just does phenomenal work. Obviously, my company's Beach and Tactical. I made the sling. I've got fire kits and these sear pouches, which can attach to almost anything. Essie. I love Essie knives. This is another sheath from Doug Wilson Yellow Hawk Custom Kydex, and you can see he almost always includes an extra striker here. So even if you don't have your blade, or if you just want to use your sheath as a handle or as a striker or whatever, you have that with you. Essie knives. Guys, if you're watching this channel, I didn't used to do videos of Essie knives, and this year they have exploded on my channel because I love using them, and I just keep collecting more and more. I'm a big fan of them. I mean, I've used so many knives. If you're familiar with this channel, you know how many tools I use, and Essie just comes out on top for me, guys. Obviously Exotac, I didn't used to use Exotac, and now it just makes sense. I mean, they're awesome products, and they have replaceable ferro rods, so you don't have to keep buying handles, because yes, I do like having nice handles on my ferro rods. And Council Tool. In my opinion, Council Tool is the only company right now making axes that are actually making a difference. You've always had Grands for Brooks, you've always had other companies that have good quality axes. They've been doing the same thing forever. Council Tool is making axes in America. They're doing hardened poles, excellent geometry, modern steels, modern heat treat. I don't want to spend my money with any other axe company. I'm gonna be awesome. They're honest. They're so good. I'll be doing more videos on this shortly, by the way. And of course, the Hidden Woodsman. I brought all of this stuff out. My Hidden Woodsman haversack. It's actually my wife's, so I need to clean it before she kills me. And we've been sitting on a Hidden Woodsman bushcraft chair, keeping our butts dryish, except now our butts are covered in goat slobber because the goats have been trying to eat it. So all of these companies are absolutely phenomenal. I hope that you can check them out. I appreciate you watching. Please check out the links in the description box below. I look forward to talking to you, and I hope that you have a blessed day. GoPro, stop.